So when this teacher first came up to me and asked me to introduce them at the speech, I got really nervous because I had no idea what I was going to say that showed how really great they are. And so I was thinking, and then I kind of just realized, like, oh, this is going to be so easy because this person is so fantastic. Okay, so to start, the most inspirational teacher is someone who deeply touches their students' lives in many ways. And for me, this person has done this in all aspects of my life, and I think that they've done that for everybody and for all of their students. And so in one of the first weeks of class with this teacher, he played a Lumineer song and told the class to analyze it. And when this happened, I was kind of just thinking, like, what does this have to do with anything? Like, that does not make any sense. And then when we started analyzing the lyrics, I realized how many literary references there were, and because of that, I kind of just had a whole new, like, enlightenment on music, and that changed my life a little bit. And then so as the year progressed, things got interesting, and they were fun, but still really educational, and I learned a lot. And this teacher had funny jokes and silly puns that made me laugh. And all around, just this man inspired me to become not only a better writer, but just a better person in general. And so I would just like to say thank you to him for inspiring me to become better and changing my life in more ways than you never know. And so it is with great honor that I may introduce to you inspirational teacher of the 2015 to 2016 school year, Dr. McGill's.
I want to begin by saying that I'm honored and humbled and definitely surprised at this, although if I really think about it, I probably shouldn't be very surprised considering that I'm the one who was in charge of the balloting budget. Right, and even had I not been the one tallying / doctoring ballots, sure, I could have always relied on the election being rigged for me by the two junior girls who apparently have a huge crush. Just let that kind of marinate for a minute. But I want to set joking aside for a minute here because ultimately I want to talk about some things that have just been on my mind over the last couple of weeks. So I got to start by sort of begging your patience. I beg your patience, and I beg your patience because I want to talk about some things. I want to work through some ideas, some things that have been on my mind, some things I find troubling. Because these are troubling times. A lot of people in this auditorium know trouble. A lot of people in this auditorium are on close terms with trouble. Troubling times. We're coming up here on the anniversary of the death of PJ Purcell, who many of you knew and loved and loved. Classmates, Roman Ashdown, who I don't think is here with us today, but I wish he were, and wish him the best. Lost his father last week, tragically, unexpectedly. We all know what our teacher of the year, Mrs. Harper Road, and our former schoolmate Chase went through this year. We've all also seen firsthand the heroic struggles of Mrs. Montserrat, Mrs. Bartman the last few years. Right? Troubling things that make our hearts heavy, things that make us weep, but they're real things, and they're with us. So I beg of you your patience because I got to work through some of these things here with you today. So, in all truth, Even as I was going through these ballots, I was surprised to find that many of you consider me inspirational. And in the main, it's because I don't really see myself as inspirational. I don't really see myself as an example. I don't necessarily see myself as someone to be emulated. So I didn't understand this election, but I wanted to. I don't like things I don't understand. Now, certainly willing to begin with an idea put forth by Romanian philosopher Emil Cioran, who once wrote that if we were to see ourselves as others see us, we would vanish on the spot. What he means here is that the way we know ourselves, who we are to ourselves, bears almost no similarity to how other people might think about us. So think about that for a moment, right? The idea that everything you think other people think about you may be completely and totally wrong. Now, that would certainly provide one explanation for my seeming inspiration to others. But as I was thinking this over, I think that's too easy of an answer. It kind of leaves too much unfinished. It sort of mystifies too much, leaves too much to the unknown. So I had to puzzle it out further. The mysterious case of the junior class who finds me inspiration. I had to solve it, I had to think, reflect, meditate, pray even. In the course of this reflecting, then I encountered, coincidentally, maybe or perhaps providentially, two realizations. Actually, I should put that better. One was a realization, the other one was more of an accusation. But first, let me tell you what the realization was. So as I was thinking this over, it struck me that English teachers have won this award 2 of the 3 years that I've worked here. The other year was a social studies teacher, which, if we're honest, social studies is a little more than English in disguise. Just to say it's the study of a story, right? One grand narrative that presents itself as history. So English teachers, 2 of 3 years, teachers of stories, 3 of 3. If that's not enough, as I was thinking this over, also recall the fact that last year both Mr. Sloan and Mrs. Simpson received similar honors at last year's senior. So that's something that I think, you can't call it a trend, at least call it statistically significant. So I'd ask myself, what is it that's being taught in these English classes that students are so often coming away from inspired? Now, allow me here to present the accusation because I think, in a way that might seem contradictory at first, the accusation answers the question of the inspiration. So the second thing that struck me during these deliberations, and I say strike because it kind of came as something of a slap in the face, is when I learned that English teachers, and myself in particular, are sometimes accused of assigning what the accusers see as sad books. Why do English teachers always assign such sad books? Stories of violence, stories of loss, stories of sorrow, pain. Wait a second, I mix myself up. Was I back to English or was I still talking about history? Yeah. So these two things struck me almost simultaneously, right? That I, on the one hand, kind of intellectual sadist who delights in subjecting my students to cruel and crushing stories of tragedy and loss, yet, on the other hand, I'm also somehow regarded by those same students as inspirational. You know, F. Scott Fitzgerald once wrote that the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. Oh, was this a test of my intelligence, right? Me, the torturer, held there, suspended in my mind, right up next to me, the inspired. How to make sense of that? In the end, though, the conclusion I came to wasn't that one characterization of my teaching was right and one was wrong. It's that they're both right. And they're both right precisely because they're functioning with each other. What we assign in English classes aren't sad books. They're human books. They have sadness, absolutely. But so too do they have happiness and compassion and victory and courage and love. The greatest books encompass the totality of human experience, and human experience is nothing if stripped of its painful moments. Our highs and our lows make us who we are. So the next words I'll share with you are going to be familiar to some of you. I've read them with some of you, I've discussed them with some of you, and I've told some of you that together, in my mind, they may well make perhaps the most important sentence I've ever read. They come, I think not ironically, from what is as sad a book as anyone who loves to accuse other people of assigning sad books will ever find. The Road by Cormac McCarthy. And that story is deeply sorrowful. If you're not familiar with it, it's a story of a father, a son, trekking alone across a starving dystopian wasteland after the bitter destruction of the world as we know it. The landscape through which they travel is bleak. There is nothing of nourishment or salvation for them to be found anywhere. Land without hope, land shorn of its foundation and left to drift in nothingness. But it's against that weakest and most tortured of backdrops that the novel puts forth its most beautiful image. Father and son, each the other's world entire, sustained only by their love, living only for each other. Even then, at the bitterest end, survives the spark of human love. And that spark burns brightest precisely when its backdrop is darkest. The one all the more intense and vivid and beautiful because of the other. So in the midst of this book, in one of his rare moments of exposition, McCarthy tells us this. He sort of steps off the page to tell us this, the method of his madness, the inspiration in this tormented world he imagined. He says that all things of grace and beauty such that one holds them to one's hearts have a common provenance in pain. Now, provenance for any men being slackers out there means birth, beginning, origin. Okay, so all things of grace and beauty, all things that we hold dear, begin first in pain. So I'm going to try something here with you guys. Have you imagine something, visualize something. Okay? So visualize this, all right? Imagine the infant, the newly born human being. In fact, the very moment of birth. What for the infant must be a moment of excruciating shock, violence, pain, the first hunger, the cold antiseptic air of the delivery room, the rough human hands that reach for it, grasp it by the crown of its head, and pull it forth. 20th century psychologist Sigmund Freud speculated that that experience was so shocking to the newborn being that it then spends the rest of its life in what amounts to a misguided attempt to recover the peaceful perfection of that moment. So think about that, the strangeness, brutality of that. Imagine. Then, the warmth of its mother's skin, soft caress, that first loving touch, the nourishment of that first feeding, the peace of that first sleep. The goodness of that, all the better for the violence that is our pathway to this world. The intensity of everything we will ever enjoy arises from the depths of everything we've ever suffered. They are linked. Only together can we glimpse the full vision of the human. Only by embracing both can we become fully human. So juniors, here we go. My big inspirational message. I hope it's as much a revelation to you as it was to me. Before I get there though, I want to be clear about something. I'm not just saying what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. I'm not saying just that. So I want anybody coming to me saying all I did was rip off a Kelly Clarkson song for my inspirational speech. That's related, maybe. But what I'm suggesting is a little bit more. Not just that we get stronger by what doesn't kill us, but that the very height of our joy is defined and determined by the depth of our suffering. The one gives rise to the other. So let me leave you with this. All right? You all of you, juniors, sophomores, freshmen, parents, teachers, self. We all end this year and step into summer and on to the next year, whatever that is for us. This coming year holds great promise for us all, tremendous achievements, accomplishments. Who knows what feats the next 365 days hold for the people gathered in this space. But who knows what pain? So here's what I ask. Whatever pain may find you, of course, let us all hope together that it's minimal. But whatever pain may find you, don't flee it. Don't invite it. Certainly don't go looking for it. But should it come, don't recoil. Don't flee. Face it. Accept it. Own it. If we master it, if we learn its lessons, we learn to find the meaning in it, our pain won't destroy us. It will define us. God bless you all.